What's up guys? So today's video is a random question video. If you guys are new to the channel, the way this works is I answer a bunch of questions in rapid fire and then give you guys the answers. Now, with this type of video, I always give away something free, and today's sort of thing is going to be work like this. Throughout the video, I'm going to ask you guys some questions, or if you see something or hear me say something that you want to comment on, comment down below, and I'm going to go through after the first like 48 hours, we'll say, I'm going to go through and pick 3 people to win access to some of my courses on Jujitsu.net. So on Jujitsu.net, I have a bunch of different courses, everything from half guard to guard passing to whatever, and I will pick 3 people to win access to some of those. So when you're watching the video, whether you're answering the question that I pose to you or you just want to comment on something I say, comment down the section below and you'll have a chance to win. And guys, with that said, let's jump into the questions. So biggest weakness when I first started out, and fun question or fun story about Joe. I met Joe, the person that asked the question, in a gas station. Jess and I were coming back from a trip somewhere, and we stopped at a gas station to get some water and things, and then run into him, and he was like, "Hey, you're the jiu-jitsu guy." And we end up talking, whatever. Anyway, so for your question, Joe, my weakest position was guard. I mean, right out of the gate, everything off of my back was bad, because as a wrestler, I had it drilled in my head that being on your back is a bad thing because you get pinned. So I didn't like being on my back, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So both, it was like physical conditioning and it was mental conditioning. I didn't want to be there. And it wasn't until my coach, I didn't really make the conscious effort to get good at guard at first. My coach forced me on my back for a number of months, where he didn't let me, like, didn't matter what position or what thing we were working on the day, every time we rolled, I started on my back, and if I wanted to get on top, I had to get the sweeper, do something. And so again, I ended up getting better at it and ended up really enjoying the guard, but I was very resistant to it at first, and it wasn't until my coach forced me to be there that I got better at it. I've done videos on this in the past. I think grappling dummies are a waste of time and effort and in relation to the amount of effectiveness that they have for training, and again, how many times they're probably going to get used long term. A great example is my buddy Eugene, the jiu-jitsu therapist. He actually made a DIY version of a grappling dummy, put it together, stuffed it up, put the thing in there so it kind of looks like a person. And he said to me the other day, he said, "Man, it was a waste of money." He's like, "I never use the thing. I've used it a couple times. Otherwise, it sits in the corner." To me, there's better uses of your time and money and effort than making a grappling dummy. I think there's better things you can do. But so I don't know much about doing a DIY version. Mustafa, how can you relax in bad positions? The same way you can relax whether you're training or you're off the mat, with your breath. So one of the things my coach had me do, and this was from the very get-go, is to control my breathing, because what we found was anytime I got into a bad position, like being on the bottom of mount, bottom of side control or anything, is that I would either hold my breath or I would hyperventilate. So one of the easiest things that you can do to sort of get yourself to calm down and relax is to take a big deep breath and breathe out. Just take it in and breathe it out. Big deep breath in through the nose into your stomach, and then breathe it out and relax yourself, and then figure out what you got to do. If you can't take a big deep breath into your lower belly, I put up a video. I'll put a link down below that'll teach you how to do that through a wall exercise. But again, take a big deep breath in through your stomach, breathe, and then slow everything down. It'll work wonders. This works wonders for me personally on the mat during training or in a competition, or off the mat. If I just find myself in a situation that's a little hairy and I need to relax, I'll just breathe a little bit. So Aldo, how do you take a technique to make it digestible to a student who has trouble memorizing techniques? From one coach to another coach, because I think that you're a jiu-jitsu coach, one of the things I would encourage you to do, if you're not already doing it, is to teach kids, because teaching kids is a unique challenge to a coach, because you have to be both good at taking complex ideas and breaking them down into simple terms that a kid can understand, and 2, you've got to be entertaining, because if you're teaching to kids and you're boring, kids are going to be looking around at the ceiling. Don't expect them to get anything right, because they're not paying attention. They're just there. Whereas if you're able to give them simple terms that they can understand, and you can be entertaining, you'll have their attention and they'll be doing it. Adults are very similar. They just show it differently. So for instance, with adults, they will not start to look around as much because they've been conditioned to look like they're paying attention. So they'll be looking at you, but their head's somewhere else. You literally, they'll be blank staring, and then they're not even paying attention at all. And then if you try to go off and like flex your lexicon on someone, like again, sometimes it's fine, but sometimes people just get bored with it. They're like, okay, here he goes. So again, and I'm guilty of where I've seen people do this and I get bored. So again, and I like jiu-jitsu, but anyway, I'll digress. So one of the things I would say, man, is to teach kids. It'll teach you how to take these complex ideas, break them down into chunks, and teach you how to be entertaining. And people who are having trouble taking in the information, they will be much more apt to learn this stuff if it's simple and if it's entertaining to where you have their attention. My favorite concept applied to everyday life just show up. I mean, that's probably one of the most important things that I've gained from grappling in general, right? Wrestling and jiu-jitsu, is that when you want something, you've got to get used to just grinding away, and you've got to get used to just showing up regardless, right? Whether things are going well that day or not, whether you feel like it or not, you just do it anyway because you want the outcome that's going to come from it, you know? So with jiu-jitsu, you think of it that a lot of times you show up, even if you don't feel great that day, you have a day where, like, again, by all intents and purposes, you were the nail, you didn't do very well that day, but you know that it's contributing to something better long term. And a lot of times outside the gym, in life, everything else that we do, you're gonna be going through these grinds, whether you're trying to build a business, whether you're trying to improve your health or whatever it might be. And you've gotta do things not because of the initial immediate gratification that you get, but for the long-term thing that you're trying to chase. And I think that's one thing that I got from grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu at a young age that served me incredibly well throughout my whole life. So John, I'm 6 foot tall, about 215 pounds, and for all you guys that aren't in America and you guys are on the metric system, I'm about 1.82 meters and I weigh about 97 kilos. So how do you get the most from instructionals when you can't train? Well, to me, it's the same way that you get the most from instructionals when you do train, which is to watch this stuff, to study this stuff on repeat over and over and over again. Like, a lot of people will watch movies and they'll watch TV shows to the point where they know these movies and shows line for line, right? Do that with your instructional material. Like, for me, if I read a book, if I study an instructional course, whatever it might be, I'm going through that thing at least 5 to 7 times because I want to absorb that stuff on a deeper level. I don't want to just go through it once and think, oh, that was cool, right? It's like, you don't really know much about it. You went through it once, but if you keep going back around that stuff over and over and over again, you'll start to get that stuff sunk in on a deeper level. And that's what I'm really going for when I study courses and informational material, whether it be books or videos, whatever it might be. So with that said, go through it over and over and over again to the point where you know it just like a movie that you know line for line. So where do you see the future of jiu-jitsu headed? By jiu-jitsu, I think you mean like the channel and the social media stuff. Honestly, man, I'm just trying to improve it and make it better over time. You know, just that's the goal, just make it better. But I do have a question for you guys that are watching, and you guys can reply with your comments down below. I've gotten a lot of non-related jiu-jitsu questions, enough that I feel like there's a desire for me to answer them. It's not just 1 or 2 anymore. Would it be better, you think, if I took those non-jiu-jitsu related questions and answered them on like a Sunday or something, just like 1 day a week? Or do you think it would be better to keep jiu-jitsu separate and non-jiu-jitsu separate and just do a whole new channel? What do you think? Because I've been struggling with this because I keep getting these questions in and I don't want to mix everything up to where people become confused. But again, let me know what your thoughts are. Should I do it on like 1 day a week on the channel here, or should I make a whole nother channel that sort of diverts off? Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below. And again, I'll pick a few people out of this comment section today to win access to some of my courses on jujitsu.net. So if you're having feelings of inadequacy as a white belt because you suck, man, that's coming from somewhere in you. Because I imagine if you're in a decent gym, if this is not the case, then maybe you should leave. But I imagine if you're in a decent gym, your coaches are supportive, your training partners are supportive, they're all trying to help you through this thing. And again, you're going through the situation where you're struggling because you're new, you're beginning. That's why you suck at jiu-jitsu, because you're not trained. You haven't trained long enough. And you're having this feelings of inadequacy. Those feelings are coming from you, not from anyone else. And this is something that's important to remember because, like, for instance, me, when I was a white belt, when I first started, I was an insecure person, hadn't really proved myself with anything. And so therefore, when I was doing stuff, I always had this feeling of inadequacy whenever I didn't do something correctly. Now, being a little bit older, a little bit more wise, proven things to myself numerous times, when I get into something brand new, I understand I'm going to suck. It's par for the course, and there's no feelings of inadequacy. It's simply just, I'm the beginner. And so understand that if you're feeling inadequate, that's not the case. You just haven't trained long enough, and you're beginning, and that's just par for the course. So will you see a decrease in your performance after the quarantine? Yeah. I mean, you're not training. So the biggest things that you're going to notice, one is when you come back, and this is true for pretty much any layoff from training, is when you come back, your timing's going to be off. So you're going to like see the technique, and you're going to notice it when you're rolling, but your body's just not going to fire and pull the trigger like it usually does, right? You're going to be a little slow to doing the technique. That's pretty normal. Comes back pretty quickly. And then your cardio is going to be off, right? You're not going to have that same sort of mat win that you had, that mat cardio that you had previously. It's just not going to be there. Even if you do a good job of staying in shape, it's just not quite the same thing. Here's the beautiful thing though. It comes back pretty quickly. So what were my highest and lowest points in jiu-jitsu? They're probably not what you guys expect. They have nothing to do with tournaments. I know like a lot of people, their highest point they think is a competition win, lowest point is maybe a loss. For me, my highest point is when I got to see these guys promoted to black belt, right? Like when I promoted those guys to black belt, that was probably my high points. Promoting someone to black belt, that's a big deal. And those were the times where I felt the most satisfied and where internally I felt really good about it, right? Competitions, a lot of times I win that medal, you know, I take a picture of it and I throw it in the bag and whatever, move on, more competitions to go after, right? And I don't really worry about losing tournaments either, because again, when you lose, it's like, whatever, it sucks, it's not fun, but you know what, I can train tomorrow. For me, the low points have been, there were two of them, was 2004 and 2014, I had back-to-back-to-back injuries. Some of them had nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, but these string of injuries that kept me off the mat from anywhere from 3 to 6 months, that was a big deal, because it's one thing to like maybe be in a slump or whatever, but I can still train. It's another thing to have training taken away from me because of injuries. And again, those prolonged injuries, those were the big low points of my jiu-jitsu career, because again, I enjoy this thing. It makes me incredibly happy, and not being able to do it, that's not fun. Those are my low points. The first question I'll pose to you guys is, what was your weakest area? Now, again, if you're brand new to jiu-jitsu, this may not apply to you, but if you've been training for 6 months to a year or more, and you have conquered some of those weaknesses to some degree, what area of the game was the weakest for you, and how did you improve upon that? Share that in the comments down below to win a chance to get one of my courses. So that's it for today's video with the random questions. Again, if you want to win access to one of my courses, throw a comment down below, and I hope you guys had a good time. Talk to you next time.